What's up, guys? This is the third installment of the ARG Iceberg. I'm sure you already know, but for those who don't, an iceberg has different tiers of entries relating to the subject. The further down you go, the more obscure the entries get. So with the formalities out of the way, let's begin. Tier 4. ALEXKANSAS. This is a YouTube ARG that's a little bit different than the other entries we've covered in this iceberg. This is debatably the first entry on this berg that's considered analog horror. And before I continue with this entry, let me give a brief explanation of what analog horror is. It's less based on visual jump scares and more auditory or psychological horrors. Oftentimes they rely on VHS style video to make it feel a bit more realistic. Other times they will display an emergency alert system being ran to alert viewers about something that's very strange to hear. It could be a simple warning like you may hear a knock at the door and you should not open it, or a warning to not look at the full moon that night. Another unique aspect with analog horror is that you are often the main character. There is not necessarily a character that we follow throughout the story. To me, this feels a little bit more personal and appeals to a certain feeling inside all of us. Oftentimes it won't make sense until much later when these seemingly random tidbits start to merge together into one conglomerate story. But back to ALEXKANSAS. This style of videos created comes off in a radio broadcast or documentary kind of style. Most of them are between 3 and 10 minutes long. The first few videos seem to be slowly introducing you to the mythos that they have created. He shows a few videos that seem to be indirectly describing various creatures or situations found in that reality. Some of them are creatures like the corner folk or a condition where you can only walk backwards. But soon we're introduced to the most popular entries. Alex creates situations revolving around American monuments and locations where strange things happen. Creepy documented stories of creatures living within these statues, or in this case where anti-Americans are taken to correctional facilities located at American monuments in order to symbolize a return to American virtues. When these people returned to their families, they were said to have improved personalities, no memory of their anti-American past, and even slightly altered physical appearances. Or in several of the videos that will tell a story of a national monument and a creature living inside of them. They will only show a few frames of the monster, giving just enough vibe of creepiness to get you thinking. Alex released a 31-second teaser for Season 1 of the Monument Mythos, where he will be going over international monuments next. We've seen a couple of entries into this, but it seems like Alex has started to make some more, and we're all excited for him. Gregory88. This is an interesting 2019 Twitter ARG where a man is left responsible for a big house in the middle of the woods. The Twitter account actually starts very innocuously with nothing relevant really to the RPG. This was most likely a dormant stage to add a sort of validity to the account to prove it was not simply just hopping into a story. Where the real story begins is when the man begins cleaning the property around the house. He starts finding artifacts and other strange things. He doesn't really think much of it at the time, but eventually he starts finding things that genuinely startle him. Then he sees a girl with no eyes. The story begins to delve deeper into the surrounding town and its peculiarities, like no eggs being found anywhere, as well as an abundance of kids. Greg did a great job pacing out the submissions to this Twitter over time, and we actually eventually meet the girl with no eyes. She reveals the artifacts were actually meant for his protection and that there exists something in the water surrounding the house. Though this ARG answers a lot of questions, there still remains a lot unanswered. We unfortunately may never find out, as the Twitter account has since gone cold with no new posts. Local 58. So Local 58 has taken on a bit of a cult following. On the surface it appears to be a series of scheduled broadcasts by a local news station. When analyzed, however, you begin to see that this has a much more sinister agenda at play. Each of these videos are only a few minutes long, but really drive home their point. Throughout its story, we see a strong emphasis on the moon and what happens when people look at it. We see an emergency broadcast that advises us to avoid the moon, and then that same broadcast seems to be hijacked and instead tells us to go outside immediately and look at the moon. Then we see these messages telling us, "It's in the light. The moon came in. He found me. Through the mirror. Moonlight white. White like eyes. Not light but blood. I drown in him. If you are afraid, we will look together." We then see a clip of the moon descending with a crowd of people screaming in the background. In other videos, we see personalized sleep programming for a Philip Gerhard, involving a number of image faces and seemingly subliminal programming through these phrases. There's also a show for children on the same channel that seems to be programming for kids as well. There's clearly a lot more here than meets the eye. To me, however, these are really just a play on the potential for the danger that can be caused with malevolent use of emergency broadcast systems, whether that be advising you to take a life or cause harm, or through the work of brainwashing and subliminal programming. I think that's why the analog horror genre is so popular, because it's typically placed in a time before the internet, as emergency broadcast advising the nation to do something irrational could have resulted in mass hysterics and could result in a lot more damage to the world at large. And without the internet to verify these things, who knows where it could end up. Tengri 137. So we're definitely getting deeper into the iceberg here. Information is starting to get more sparse as I proceed further, and my suggested feed is getting more and more weird as I go on. Thank you, algorithm. Speaking of algorithm, if you're enjoying the video, encourage the algorithm to spread this to more people by liking and subscribing. But back to Tengri. From what I understand, Tengri 137 refers to a series of puzzles that were posted online, much like Cicada 3301. However, this one doesn't have quite as much pizzazz or reach as Cicada. Instead, this one takes a more cult or prophetic-like approach, as it had requested viewers to contact local news outlets about their findings. Along with the number puzzles, there were messages written in foreign languages. There seems to be a small sect of people that agree the puzzles here are so significantly complex that the source has to be something supernatural or otherworldly, especially as Tengri itself is a form of a religion. After this image was posted on Imager, we receive a series of tweets containing Bible verses and audio clips that each contain various hidden codes. The most commonly accepted conclusions have been this being an attempt at first contact from another race of beings sharing sacred knowledge, or it's an incredibly elaborate hoax, while there also seems to be another group of individuals that insist these are previously accepted concepts in more advanced fields of mathematics. Quite honestly, I don't have the mathematical expertise to give a valid opinion on this. Maybe you guys could find out more than I could. Daisy Brown. This was a series of videos on YouTube where a character was played named Daisy Brown. Unlike many other ARGs, this one is not focused on puzzles as much as heavy emphasis on an interactive story. While this all played out, the character was continued to be played via social media, giving a very real feel to its authenticity. The series starts where a girl is feeding what looks to be a papier-mâché monster puppet named Alan. It has a strange vibe to it, but nothing too creepy yet. However, over the time, the creature begins to grow and we begin to meet other creatures. We learn more about how and why this girl is alone taking care of this monster. Her father was very harsh with her, and Alan begins to take on many of the same traits, killing some of her other creature friends and pulling the hair out of Daisy's head. The posts pace themselves out, allowing people to discover and interact with Daisy. There are even clips of Daisy asking viewer-submitted questions to Alan. This story has a definitive ending, but the twists and turns along the way make it a pretty jarring trip. The endings seem to have a widely hailed reception, with many people feeling very satisfied with the way it culminated. The creator of this project went on to work on a new ARG called Echo Rose. Stan Frederick. Starting as a web series from 2012 and a much younger Stan, he earned his place among the creepypasta and ARG communities. He started in a Slender Man story that had mild success. However, it paved the way for a series he's more recently started in the same mythos. However, instead of a single Slender Man haunting this young man, it's him on the offensive. Stan takes the role of what he calls a signal disruptor, where he visits other people who are having similar hauntings with other creatures and beings of various kinds. However, now he's gained some sort of immunity or ability to communicate and interact with these entities. Stan takes us on his adventures as a sort of Ghostbusters or X-Files agent of some sort. There's a lot more to the story, like his run-in with an entity who has become his rival Connor. Stan is forced to make a deal with Slenderman where he trades his own life for the ability to take Connor with him. Luckily, this doesn't prevent him from continuing the final season as he begins to occupy the body of his deceased brother Eric. This is a fascinating concept that can branch off into any number of paranormal investigative paths. It will be exciting to see where he takes this show from here. My Dad's Tapes. This started as a YouTube channel that was documenting an investigation a man named Chris was having with several tapes that were left after his estranged father died. On these tapes were recordings of various shows and movies. However, interwoven between the shows featured a series of stalkings and murders of different young women by a masked man. Since Chris never knew his father, he was unsure of his father's ability to do such a thing. After this, he interviewed a number of different people about their thoughts on whether or not his father would do such a thing. The results were mixed, but nevertheless we're introduced to Chris's Uncle Don, who will play a pivotal role in this series. Eventually we're introduced to the ARG's sister channel, aptly named Do Not Continue, to warn off Chris from pursuing his investigation any further. The two channels go back and forth in response to one another, with Do Not Continue's channel displaying various murders, and in response Chris continuing to find new clips on his dad's tapes and posting them online. The antagonist kidnaps Chris's girlfriend, and eventually a meeting is held between the two, in a restaurant in broad daylight, might I add. And it was at this point all remaining sense of immersiveness is thrown out the window for me. Nevertheless, the production value throughout the series is pretty decent, with some on-point acting at times, but I think it's ironic that Chris points out that Do Not Continue is just killing senselessly just to kill, and to me that's exactly what this show ended up being. Just a surface level murder porn, but maybe you'll find more to it. Emergency Alert System Videos. Outside of the emergency broadcasts from the earlier entries in this list and others like them, I wasn't sure exactly what this was in reference to, but I believe I found something that correlates with it. It revolves around these fake emergency broadcasts. While not necessarily an ARG on the surface, they can still fall under the category by checking off some of the same boxes. People interweave these videos into clips of something entertaining that is watchable to begin with, then they prank their friends or family with this alert. So while we're not involved as a viewer, the unsuspecting victims are unknowingly playing a game with the organizer of the prank. And realistically, when I was researching these videos and imagining what it would really be like to experience an authentic event like this, it's truly a chilling thought. We really are powerless in the grand scheme of these things, and these emergency alerts can really instill fear into many people, especially those that grew up pre-internet and had the television as their primary form of entertainment. But that's just a theory as to what this might be. If you guys know of any particular ARG that was referenced here, let me know and I'll include it in future videos of the series. As you guys know, I cut out the fluff and get right to the meat and potatoes of my videos. I don't want to waste 3 to 5 minutes of everyone's time trying to be funny or plug my own social medias. However, I'm torn because very few content creators on YouTube actually create with this style of content. So if you appreciate this style of no fluff content and want me to keep continuing with it, let me know in the comments. It greatly encourages me to keep making this format of content and not becoming another cringy YouTuber. But that's it for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. Cheers.